So these unwillingness to understand what sovereignty really can be, and what perhaps in some ways it should be, really I think is what deformed our own destiny. Insofar as we want to become whole again, I think we have to re-embrace what America once was. Look at the Aboriginal peoples, look at how complete their lives were in sort of the working harmony for nature over 13 millennia. If you look back at the ecological history of America, North America was the last continent to be inhabited by the human race. About 13,000 years ago, the myth is, told from archaeologists, is that a migratory group of Paleo-Indians followed migrating woolly mammoth across the ice bridge, Beringia, and discovered this new world carpeted by tall grass prairies, inhabited by all these mythical beasts, the mastodon, the mammoth, the short-faced bear, the prairie wolf, the saber-toothed tiger. Whether that myth is any truer than the creation myths of some of the Indian people, what they're trying to say is that the timeline in which the ecological disruption occurred wasn't in that 13,000 years of Indian inhabitation, but in that past 400 years from when we date in 1607, the recent anniversary of Jamestown. That's that short compressed timeline in which North America was transformed from this sort of original state to an industrial superpower. So we can see sovereignty in action in a way in which its features are both attractive and unattractive. The challenge for both the Indian and non-Indian people is to find those attractive features that give hope, give dignity, give energy in a world that seemingly, for some people at least, has lost its ethical and moral way. So I'd like to think that sovereignty, insofar as Indian people understand it, can become that new model, that new understanding of the right relationship between Indian people, a place, and their governance. And that if we can instill that idea, teach children to become better stewards from the time they enter kindergarten, teach adults to understand the sort of intergenerational responsibility, teach school teachers and other caretakers of these young minds to exercise that responsibility in a way that gives due regard to the spirit and greatness of those young hearts and minds they have in their charge. The vision from a child looking up is that the parent, the teacher, their guardian, so to speak, are the first sovereigns. And that insofar as you think of that Marxian viewpoint that the family is the original unit of government, there's probably some truth to that. And the family writ large is the extended family of the Indian people or the nation, the family of people. And I think that's a possibility that sovereignty has failed in the sense that it becomes a removed entity, becomes someplace found in the bureaucracy of federal agencies, or becomes located in Congress. People forget that they were the original sovereigns, that in both theory and practice they're the ones that created the American government. And I think it's that reclaiming that sovereignty in a way that makes sense, to basically find a way to sort of say, if I'm the parent in a situation, that I have some greater responsibility that's been entrusted to me both naturally and legally to raise these children. And I think that's one of the key factors that we lost, is that we expect other institutions to do work for us. And I think that's part of that reclaiming a deeper understanding of relationship to sovereignty, is that you have that self-sovereignty, that self-understanding that you're a critical part of this entire part of the puzzle. So if parents fail, then the society tends to fail. So you think about these ideas of sovereignty exercised in the right way of reconnecting people to their best selves, higher ideals, ethical, spiritual aspirations, a sovereignty that's very different from the ones that's taught in the 8th grade civics books. But to find a way to think of sovereignty as sort of a legacy available to each of us, and that we participate in a way much like the old ideas that now discredited, called the town hall meeting, in which on a daily basis we have to be responsible for those choices we make. Not to try to say that that's the only way, but I think that's one way that people feel reconnected to larger processes and abstract systems that they now feel excluded from.